In this video, I want to tap into my experience with Adobe Photoshop and demonstrate some of the tips that have worked for me in what is nearly 30 years of working with the platform. Lots of things have changed, in particular the new AI content aware tools, which are fantastic, and I'm going to be focusing a lot of what I'm going to be doing around those. But the idea of this series is how we can take medium quality smartphone photos, or even some poor quality ones, focus on a central product, then dress up and improve the environment around it to make it a more appealing photo for day-to-day use. But before we jump in, I just want to get this one thing clear. There is, in my opinion, no substitute to professional photography. So if you have the budget and you want the best results, hire a professional photographer. Second to that, there is no substitute to having the right kit. Many of the photos I'm going to be working on are taken with a medium-priced smartphone. So they're not the highest spec iPhone 15 Pro, which I'm recording this video from, and it's certainly not a digital SLR camera. So therefore, the results will vary. But this video is all about how we can take photos that don't really do our work justice and improve them to show them off to a much higher level. Great for social media posts, great for filler content on our website, but this wouldn't necessarily be the content we'd use for our hero sections or banners on our websites unless really pushed. Essentially, we're just dressing up the photo without changing the product at the center of it. We are not trying to mislead. What we are trying to do is to repackage these photos so they look more appealing. So if you're still watching, I bet you're itching to see what we do with each of these photos in this series. Grab a cuppa, sit back, relax. We've got about 1 hour, 20 minutes of editing photos and taking them from this to this. Let's crack on. This is the result of a standard photo that we get as web designers that we need to improve either for the website or for social media channels. And I'll show you the original photo where we can see that it's more grayed out. We can see a bit of a house in the background there. We can see part of a vehicle. And if we look a bit closer, we can also see that the shed is still on the palette. So what we're going to do is lighten it up, give it a bit of color, use the AI tools in Photoshop to fix the sky in the background so we don't have it so gray and moody. And then we can add a bit more color into the building itself to give it the best possible scenario it can have. So this is all easy to do in Photoshop, and there's an asterisk next to that easy because I've been using Photoshop for probably 30 years. I was probably about 11 or 12 when I started using Adobe Photoshop back in the 1990s, and it's a very different tool to what it was then now. And we're going to use a combination of a number of tools to show how we can fix this photo. And from the next video, I won't be showing you the finished product. We'll just start with the original photo and we'll take it from there. So I'm just going to go back to the original and we'll go through the steps that I did. And the one interesting thing is it will not look the same as the example I've already created because the AI tools that create and change the sky will be very different. But let's start by fixing some of the glaring issues. The vehicle in here, the person's reflection when they're taking the photo, and a few other bits and pieces. I'm going to use Command and Plus, I'm on a Mac, to zoom in. I'm just using this on my MacBook with the touchpad, so I'm not got any sort of elite, overly complicated setup. It does help, obviously, with MacBooks that they've got really good touchpads, so I can go in quite accurate with this as well. First up, I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, or using the S key as a shortcut. And we can choose one area to select, and then we can replicate that further out. And can we see it showing that there now? The only thing with that one, I'm just changing my mind, is I'm going to go for the spot heal tool, which is the J tool, which will probably do this a little bit neater and easier. What this does is when we drag over a section, it will use AI to detect the areas around it and fill in that section, but it won't look identical. Whilst with a clone option, I can use the square brackets to scale it up or down. I can use the Option key, or Alt, I believe, on a Windows computer, and then I can mask over and clone that section somewhere else. So that works really well when we're working on edges. So I can use the Option key again down there, and can you see we're bringing that up? So I'm going to do it on the join. And then I can use the join above as my guide to replicate that, and that comes across really neat. Other tools that we could use are things like the marquee tool. And I can select this section here. And I'm actually going to select the rest of the tarmac. There we go. So that's going to be the new base level. So probably the clone stamp. So again, the S key, I'm going to select somewhere along here, or even actually, I'm looking at the same height within the photo, the same starting position, and then bring it across. And then I can just clone it in. But by bringing the marquee in there, it just gives me that edge, so it's not going to take it over into the shed itself. So that fixes most of it, but we can see that the line here doesn't look overly natural. So again, we can bring that in. We could go with bigger brush sizes as well, that can help. And sometimes the more we do it, the more we damage the original photo. So I'm going to go with that for now. And then I'm going to select this section here and take it back in. And that's done it quite tidy, that side there. What we've got to look for is any repeating patterns or any damage like that section there, and just try and clean it out. A couple of things with the brush. It's a soft brush, so if we click on this, we can adjust the hardness. When we're cloning, usually with textures, we want it to be nice and soft, so it doesn't give us a line in this section here as well. And now with this area selected, I'm going to try and replace the green. So we're going to give this tarmac a bit of a cleanup as well. So if I go to Image, Adjustments, then Replace Color, I can try and find that green hue and then just reduce the saturation of that on this section here entirely. And that's helped fix it a little bit as well. And let's have a look at the Spot Heal tool now. Can we just fix some of these areas individually? Things like getting rid of the lines in that section. It may make it slightly blurrier, which is what we don't want, but that's already looking better. Part of the reason why that's more obvious now is we're actually looking for it. Just going to get rid of some of these excess leaves as well, because otherwise they draw attention away from the shed, which is where we want the focus to be. Okay, we're trying to fix these within 10 minutes or so. I don't really want this to be a half-hour photo edit for an individual photo. But once we've done this once, these are evergreen photos. We can reuse them as many times as we want on social media ads, etc. So next up, let's fix in the window. It's not someone actually taking the photo. It's the reflection of a window in another building by the looks of it. So that one had me fooled. But what we can do is just tidy this up a little bit. Simplify the reflection. So I'm making the brush size smaller, again using the square brackets. The left bracket to make it smaller, the right bracket to make it bigger. Just cleaning up some of these spots on here. Get that window looking a little bit cleaner. Don't want to get rid of them all because it's not going to look realistic, but I think that's fine for our reflection. Now let's fix the sky. So I'm going to zoom in relatively close. I don't have to go right to it because the AI tool will detect itself. But I'm just going to go around the outside of our shed. And then to the top of this head. I want to take this house out of the equation as well. And I'm bringing them this marquee tool, which is one of my favorites. It's just so simple and easy to use. Using the Magic Wand tool probably won't pick it up perfectly. You can see I've not gone perfectly to the edge. We're going to see how this works. If I just now, with that area selected, this top section, I'm going to go to the generative fill and I'm going to type in blue sky. That's all. I'm hoping it will pick up things like the field in the background and come up with an example that's very close to that. Okay, that doesn't look overly realistic. That looks awful. And so these aren't as good as the ones I did for the other one. So let's hit the generation button again and see what it comes up with this time. Yeah, I'm really not a fan of these. Kept one simpler, bit better. We've lost some of the field in the background, which is a shame. That one's got something there. But I think we'll go with this one, and then we can just Photoshop this mess out here and see how that looks. So what I tend to do is when I'm happy with it, I'm just going to go to the layer and flatten our image. All the way down here. And now I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool and just clone out these lines. And we can see that we've already got a bit of an issue. We can see that line. So let's try the heal tool. Yeah, that's doing a better job of it, although it's not perfect. Sky is often a pain to remove stuff because it's so busy and is usually based on gradients as opposed to solid colors. Or busy textures, detailed and intricate, that make it easier to work with. Target this section here. And now let's again go to the heal tool. Fix it then within that area. That's looking better. Try and fix that sky. Sometimes just putting the heal tool over it several times can work. Sometimes it does more damage than good. There is an option we could use the healing brush tool, which works similar to the clone tool. And then we select this area at the top, and that's what we want to blend it with. Okay, that was working well up until I want to actually start with the brush further to the right. So as I take it to the left, we're not going to run out of space. And that works much better. So that's just holding in the healing brush tool and then going from spot to the standard or the old healing brush tool. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that. So now let's just fix a couple of other things. Let's go for levels, Command L, Control L on Windows. And let's just adjust it so we get a little bit more lightness in it. And then we can bring in the shadows up a little bit to give it more punch. We can also blow out the white a bit, but we don't want to do too much. You can see already with the clouds. So we don't really want to do too much with that. And now 13, 14 minutes in, I really need to be wrapping this photo up. So this is where we can go to the refinement tools here. Let's go to the sponge tool here. And we're going to saturate some of the areas that we're going to work on. So bigger brush. Just make some of this green pop a little bit more without it looking unrealistic. We've got a bit of green in on the shed itself. So let's just select this area with a marquee. And now we can adjustments. And if we go with selective color instead of replace color, and let's go for greens. And let's see if we can move the greens over to the yellows more. It may not be picking up as greens per se. So that one's not working, so let's ignore that one. And we'll go to hue and saturation actually and just target the green colors. And as we can see here, we've got green there and it's not quite selecting it. So let's move it over so it starts selecting the green tones within that section. So using the saturation can help because it can just amplify it. And now we can move that over more towards the yellow tones. And as we can see now, it's got rid of some of that green in the timber. Okay, I think that's good enough for what I want. Sometimes I'll just go to the filter option and sharpen edges. We'll just sharpen some of the textures as we zoom in. I could zoom in and start fixing this in detail, but do you know what? This is going to be used for a social media post and as a thumbnail image on a web page. It will never be used as a full-size banner because of the orientation of the photo and because it's not one of the main featured products. But I think we're quite happy with that as a starting point. I certainly am. And if we go back to the original, we can see how far that photo's come. So we got rid of the palettes, the vehicle in the background here, some of these elements, artifacts that are just taking our focus away from the main product. The grey dull sky doesn't look as appealing as this blue equivalent. And so, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. What we can do now is if we're using this for a website, I use Command, Option, Shift, and S to save for web. I like to use the legacy version. There's probably reasons why I shouldn't be using that now. And we want to keep the width and height 1500 pixels by 2000. So that means it's going to be good for medium-sized web images. It's going to always be more saturated. I think something I need to work on collaboration on my computer, but actually what we're seeing in the original photo is more accurate. And it's just blown this and made it more saturated. But we just save this into our new folder, which I'll call Final. And then I can keep the originals to compare then to the final versions. Hope you found this helpful. This video is a little bit longer than some of the others that we'll be covering, but here's just my process of how I use Photoshop. One thing I'll find is I'm not an expert on everything Photoshop. I can get Photoshop to bend it to my will to do what I need. Some of my processes may be a little bit quirky compared to other Photoshop editors. I'm also not on this software every day. I probably use it a couple of times a month now, but it's got me out of so many different holes and it's improved the quality of the photography that we work with without having to bring in a professional photographer every single time. But if push comes to shove, I'll always recommend that clients go with a photographer as and when they can. Okay, we're back for another episode and you're probably going to be fed up of looking at garden sheds and offices by the end of this series. But it provides a really good example. A lot of these are outdoor shots. We can't control the environment. We're certainly not working with team members who are waiting all day to capture the photo at just the right time where the sun's coming through and it's all looking majestic. These are practical, everyday photos, and it's what I'm probably best at editing. First, we're going to use the heal tool and we're going to pick out some of these areas. Probably don't need to use much of the AI tools in this photo. Our heal tool's not quite working there. We're jumping straight into it. I'm not going to give you much of a background. If you are new to this and you want to find out what this series is all about, hop back into the playlist and have a look at the first episode. There we go. So I'm just putting a marquee around that. And again, I'm using the heal tool. I'm just taking it up to this line. And hopefully it's going to ignore the shed. Sometimes it doesn't though. You see it's brought in some of the shed. So instead I'm going to switch to press S and go for this clone stamp tool. And we're going to clone it right the way up to that to get rid of some of that. It looks like a concrete base that's fitting flush to the shed. And I want it to look like it's stood on there much better. We can potentially bring this effect and take it across here. There's a bit of a slope here that's a bit disorientating. So if I make the brush bigger and clone some of this over here just to level it out. You see I took it up too far there. There we go. How's that? So that looks a little more level there now. I should be probably zooming in, but the idea of these is to do them really quick so we can have a photo done. Some of them are going to be as short as 5 or 6 minutes. Some will be up to 20 minutes for the more detailed, more challenging photos. But you can see here we're already getting there with this one. Now, we've got the shed here. The angle the photo's been taken makes the shed look a little bit wonky. So what we could do is use this tool here, which is the crop and straighten tool. And if we go to the spirit level icon for straighten, and let's just use that line and drag it up there to straighten that image a little bit. Or we can grab the corners and straighten until we get it so it looks right for us. What it's going to do with this tool is it will zoom in or allow us to zoom and crop in so we're not taking extra bits on the edge. Alternatively, if we're happy to kind of keep it in to the original ratio, we can crop that. We see these lines here and we can heal them or clone them out, or it's going to use the AI tool to do it. We can see there's a little bit of a line there. So the heal tool won't do any harm. They're just taking that over it. However, this is actually created as a new layer now because it's AI generated. So what we can do is go to layer and then flatten image, which allows us to use these tools. And in fact, I've got rid of the line there. So that's looking really nice. Just going to clean up some of this front here in the foreground. Okay, still looking a bit washed out. I could use the burn tool here, but I'm thinking let's just try and use the AI generative fill here for this tree line and see what it comes up with. It might not have that burnt through effect. So sometimes we don't have to type anything in, and I just want to see what it comes up with. I don't want that sky to be overly blue. I'd ideally like to keep the trees in. As you can see, it's kept it similar, but that's not what we want. We're going to undo that and go back to the original, and we'll do this the old manual way. What I'm going to do is go into these left tools here. I'm going to go to the dodge and burn tool. I'll get there. There we go. This burn tool here. So if I hold on any of these tools on the left-hand side, it will give me additional tool options. And I'm burning the shadows by 23%. So 23% might be a bit too much. But already that's giving it a sharper look and feel. I'm just going to undo that. That's probably just a bit too strong. So I'm going to take it down to about 10%. 11 will do. Make it a bigger brush. And now I'm just going to brush over it. The bigger the brush, the smoother the effect, the less likely it's going to be targeting individual areas. Okay. I could then just take it down to a much lower percentage here and just attack the shed itself and make the black tones, the dark tones, that a little bit punchier. I can create my own little vignette around the outside as well, framing the outside where it becomes a little bit darker. And I could switch to the sponge tool, and we're going to saturate, not by 34%, that'd be too strong, so about 10% again, and saturate this section at the top here. In fact, I think we can saturate it all, the shed as well. And just brushing over this loosely. I could probably leave it there. And if we go back to the original photo, we got a bit of burning and a bit of light coming through here. So if I had more time, I'd probably go spend more time to fix that. But we're looking for a good balance here between time and final effect. If we just imagine that a lot of our clients who like preserved timber products, and I'll leave a link to their website as well on this one because they've been kind enough to allow me to use their photos for the series. But this is what we tend to work with as a starting point. It's not a terrible photo taken, but what we don't have is we're a professional photographer will not only have better kit, better than a day-to-day smartphone, but they will also take time to frame the photo to get just the right angle, the right lighting, because we're taking the photo into the light here, which makes it a little bit harder. And also they would probably take the time to remove the background, or they would touch it up in Photoshop before providing to the client. Client doesn't have any of that. So if we can fix it within 10 minutes to something like this, which isn't the same level as a professional photo, but looks good enough for things like Facebook posts, social media posts, so that it makes the product look appealing to their target audience, that's the aim of the game. And if that means that they can supplement professional photo shoots every now and again with a large bank of photos like this, I think we're on to a winner. Okay, we're back with a third photo to edit in this Photo Fixes series. Again, same client, Preserved Timber Products, similar product, garden shed. With this one, we can see it's not actually looking really bad at all. It's nicely taken, the isometric angle where it's coming into that corner in the middle here. But there are certain things that we could do maybe to give this a bit more punch. And I'm going to try something a bit different that I haven't done in the other videos. And we're going to use the crop tool. And we're going to change the ratio. Find where it is, ratio top left-hand corner here. And we're going to change it to 1:1 for square. Going to bring this down. We're going to add a little bit more detail left and right. So we're still going to have our shed central, but we're going to use Photoshop to create that around. It used to take ages. I used to have to use things like the clone tool and clone all of these panels here and extend them and clone this line and this line, and it used to take ages. The grass was relatively quick. But I'm interested to see how it manages the tree line in the background, so I'm going to do that as the first job to see how it works. First attempt, not bad at all. So look at the second one, similar. Because it's got so much to work with, we're only extending by a little bit. Everything else becomes that little bit easier. So I think we'll go with that one. I'm going to go to Layer and flatten our image. If you notice, I'm adding the bits in before we do any adjustments and final tweaks like the color. Next up, we're going to use, again, this content-aware tools in Photoshop, which I'm a big fan of. And we're going to tidy up this lawn and see if it does a good job of that. We can see it's probably out of season when this was installed. Hadn't been mowed, and also probably people walking over it, carrying stuff over it. So let's get this immaculate. So with this, I'm going to put lawn and see what it comes up with. That's looking more like a finished, immaculate lawn. So we've got three options. I think we'll go with the first one. The colors of tones are just slightly closer to the rest of the photo time of day. So again, we're going to go flatten that. Okay. Next up, there's a couple of markings on the concrete lintel there, or gravel boards. I'm not sure what they are, but let's use the heal tool. And this is where I'll zoom right in. Command and plus, keyboard shortcut for that. And I'm going to use the square brackets to reduce the brush sizes down. Trim these up, tidy them up nicely. Do. So it's noticeable we've been editing this when we're close in, but when we zoom back out, it'll just make that look more seamless. Got a little bit of a line here on the fence, almost like the concrete's cracked, so let's get rid of that. This is the one that AI has brought in. And with these photos, we're not trying to make them look unrealistic. We want to keep the product very similar to what it was, but we're just improving the setting to make it look nicer without having to wait until the lawn's sorted, etc. Let's heal that out, and the same for the battens that go underneath the shed. We can see that the shed is elevated on these battens, but we don't need to see them, if that makes sense. Being a bit overly zealous for getting that gravel in. Okay, that's looking nicer. Couple of final touches now to finish up. Get rid of a couple of these marks on the lawn, but that's already looking really nice. We've extended the photo, we've sharpened it up a little bit, but we've done very little to the shed itself, which we don't want to because it's an adorable little shed. So now we're going to select this area here and select that area around. And now we're going to put in blue sky trees. We want to keep the trees in there, but I want to make this a little bit more sunny. It may not work. It may try and do too much. So that's made it look like a different location completely. So is that. That one looks quite nice. I'm going to add clouds as well, because we want a couple of clouds in. I think we'll go with that one. It looks natural. It fits it really nicely. And let's flatten that image. I didn't have to do that step. It was already looking pretty good as a photo anyway. And now let's go to the sponge tool, and we're just going to brush over it to saturate it by 10%. Get that blue a little bit more vibrant without it looking unrealistic. Same for our shed. Give it a bit more colour and oomph. And I don't want to do much else to that. I think I'm happy with that. 7 minutes in, we've taken a photo that was already pretty decent in this case. This one here. We've made it square so it's more suitable and it's given it more of a background location to work in. And we've tidied up the lawn, tweaked the background to make it a nicer day. And yeah, pretty happy with that. What do you think? Leave your comments. I will try my best to get back to them. In this video, we're going to extend the canvas using the content aware tools in Photoshop. We're going to make this shed look a bit better framed. We're not going to worry too much about the sky in the background. I think that's looking nice and blue there. We've got a little bit of the trees there, so it should extend it. We're going to see if we can get rid of that ladder nice and easily. And we're going to put a lawn around the outside. So now we know what we're going to do. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to go straight to the crop tool. And for the ratio, I'm going to stick it to the original ratio. And I'm going to extend it from the top here. And again from the bottom. So hopefully we're going to set that off better. We are adding quite a bit extra around this photo. So it might do something quite creative that we may not want. For this, for example. So yeah, we've got a little bit of work to do here, I think, to tidy this up. Not really happy with any of this. I'm not sure what it's done with the ladder there. This one could be one of the longer projects to fix. So let's just do it a bit at a time. So I'm going to use the square marquee tool and let's work on this first. And if we use maybe tree here, just to see if it'll add a tree into that section there to hide that bit of a mess. It's better, but still not right. So let's change it to hedge. Okay, that's looking better. Not perfect. We could see if we can get a window in this section here. This could look weird. Helps if I spelled window correctly. Let's see it. Yeah, see how it comes out. We'll try it properly, shall we? No, it's really struggling with that. So we're going to go to that layer and we're going to hide it. And we're just going to do a little bit of repair work on that wall. Just get rid of that line and get it straight line down here. But I think we can edit that afterwards. So from here, I'm going to look at this section next. So we're going to have to flatten the image. And let's use the marquee tool to cut around the edge of the shed. I don't want any other building feeding off from it. And we're going to put hedge again here. What I love about this tool is it's so creative and it does all the heavy lifting for you. Yeah, that's probably the best of the three. I'm not going to worry too much about doing anything else. So we're going to clear out some of that in the background to tidy it up. Okay, next up, let's have a look at this lawn. I'll try it with a patio to start with on this stand here, and then we'll put a lawn below. And if we can keep that step in, all the better. I've had really mixed results with patios. It gets the lines off sometimes. When you've got repeating patterns like that, it doesn't work as well. Yeah, we've got a mess there, haven't we? But that could work. We could maybe flatten this layer. Now we're going to select this once more. Now we've got a much simpler format. And now put stone. I bet it's going to put a giant rock there or something. Okay, I probably work with that, but I'm going to change it to stone patio. Sometimes it's just a case of rinse and repeat this process until Photoshop does something a bit better. Yeah, I think we can work with that. Maybe not perfect, but I can tweak the colors. See, we can edit that directly so we can make it a little bit lighter. And then if I press Command U, to go to the saturation, and we're going to desaturate it so it's not quite so red. And we've got something we can work with. There's just too much going on here. So this is where I'm going to flatten the image. And here we're going to just try the heal tool. So the spot heal tool, make that brush nice and big, and see if we can heal all of this section in one go. Not worth after. Let's go with a smaller brush and just tackle some of these lines to start with. Okay. While we're at it, let's just cure some of this sky. Not perfect, but we're trying to do this quickly enough so we can get around most of it. Right, let's get our lawn in at the bottom now. So I'm going to go back to the marquee tool, bring it above this pattern here, bring it into the edge of this step, and we'll put our lawn in place. So we've got that on a bit of a slope. There's a step in here, but I think we can use the heal tool now just to tidy this up. So this is where I'm going to zoom right in, get a nice clean edge on our patio step. Yeah, actually, scratch that. Let's start again. I'm going to bring it in from here. So we're going to bring the height of our lawn up a little bit. And then bring it in along the front there. And I'm going to hold shift to add some of this to the section so it's not a perfectly straight line, because that'll look a little bit suspect. And just add that in. So now we've got that section there. Let's go to the close stamp tool. I need to get it with the shadow here to take the shadow line up first. Good thing with grass is because it's so textured, we can usually get it to blend quite easily. What we've got to try and avoid is repeating patterns. So we can see this bit here and this here. So this is why we just mix it up a little bit as well. And make sure we're not getting the shadows in the wrong place. And some of this longer grass here, I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit as well. Now let's zoom out and see how our lawn's looking. A couple of things. One is we can see that line's a little too straight there. That doesn't look realistic at all. It's fine when we're zoomed out, but let's get that right now while we're at it. So I could go with a much smaller brush here and just use that tool there just to blend it in. It's not as sharp as the edge actually would be, but I think we'll be fine. So I'm not after award-winning photo editing here. I want something that hides the sin, so when we zoom out, this looks like a nicely prepared photo. Okay, we're just going to see about this line here. It's looking a little bit suspect. Let's just heal that out. And let's tidy up this line in this wall here, see if we can blend that as well. Be nice to have had a window in there, but I think we'll be okay there with that edge there. And I'm going to tidy up the top of this hedge. Okay, we're nearly there. I'm just looking at this now. What else? We need to sort out the levels. Just double check I've got the image nice and flat. Yes, it is. So let's just pump a bit more light into it without burning out the whites too much. And then let's bring the shadows up a tiny bit as well. Give it slightly more contrast. Bit more saturation as well while we're at it. And then we got a photo that pops. I'm going to go to filter, sharpen edges. It's already saved there as the last favorite used, just to give it a tiny bit more sharpness, especially when it's used on social media. And this corner here, if we can, I'm not going to sweat about it too much, but let's see if we can get some, maybe a flower bed or something in here underneath the hedge. It can come back with some really obscure results when we start putting new things into the photo. But it's improving bit by bit. That doesn't look too bad, does it? Let's make this a bit more colourful though. In fact, let's add a bit more onto the top there and let's bring it up a bit higher. Okay, we've got this entire section now. It's really not doing much there. I could nip over to run a quick Google search. Grab these ones. After something on roughly the same angle. I'm going to cut that out of there. Delete that. And we're going to move it down into the bottom here. Got a little bit of work to do to get this nice and fluffy. Is that the right word? Fluffy? Not sure. Let's try that. Okay, this is where I want to make the section a little bit darker. Take the saturation down a little bit as well, just because it's in a darker spot, so we're not going to have as much light coming onto them. And this is where I'm going to use the eraser tool. Just going to clean this up now. Okay, not terrible, not my best work. Not quite so light. We'll keep the saturation up. I think it was the lightness that was causing the issues. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. So we're just adding that as a extra layer in here, just to finish it off. Definitely not my best photo, but again, if we look at the original and see how far we've come, we've extended this to a close-in shot that was taken in a little bit too close, and 20 minutes in, we've got a photo that we can use on social media. It's jarring, that flower bed in particular, for me, but again, when someone's looking at this for the first time, unless they're looking for issues, they're not going to notice it, and that's what we're after, is just setting it in the right scenario. What we haven't done is made this shed something completely different, which is where we want to avoid for this type of client. Not sure how much I'm going to be able to improve this photo. We can see there's a lot of light damage here. It's taking into the sun, and we can also see what's going on inside the glass door. We've got this pole in front. So we're going to have a play with 10-15 minutes and see what we can do with it. And you'll start off with just using the heel brush, J key on the keyboard as a shortcut, and see if we can take this bar out of the equation. I'm using this as a touchpad on my MacBook, so not quite as accurate as I would be if I was using a mouse. we'll see if we can take most of that out. Not perfect, as you can see, but a starting point nonetheless. What I can do now is zoom in, and we can switch over to the clone stamp tool, just pressing the Option key or Alt on a PC to select that area, and we're going to replicate it above. We can see it's a little bit darker at the bottom. The light damage is burning it at the top. So we'll just come in from above. And blend it as much as we can. Take this at the bottom here. And we'll just keep releasing so it starts again. Let's just tidy this bottom up here. Back to the heal tool. And fix it up. So we've got this tortoise at the bottom here. Let's just see if we can tidy this all up in one go. It might bring in too much of the shed. No, it's picked that up quite well. Not perfect, but with every iteration, this heal tool gets better and better. Back to the clone stamp tool. Just going to bring it along here. Okay, so that's the foreground done. Let's just tidy this up now. I'm going to see if I put this on a lawn. I put a lot of things on a lawn, I know that. But lawns and hedges work quite well in the background of these photos. So we'll put hedge here. Now I get varying results with this, but I'm going to put in tarmac and see what it will do. I don't know what it's put in there. Try something else. That's better. I think I can work with that. Try one more. That could work quite nice, something a bit different. Yeah, let's go for that. The only thing is, I think if we take this out, no, the angle is right. I wasn't sure if it just changed the angle of the ground. Better to go from that angle there. The outside is a bit of trim there on that one. And the first one's got the best result. This isn't going to be the pick of the photos I've done. I'd ideally like this pattern to continue. I don't need whatever this is in the middle here, but it may or may not work. We'll try it. Oh, that's looking quite good there with a crazy paving style. Now, hopefully it will recognize the other lawn patch we've got here. Keep it looking roughly the same. No, don't like any of that. Okay, so instead what we're going to do is, with that area selected, we're going to go to the clone stamp tool, grab in the middle of this area here, make sure I flatten the image. Select the grass. And if I start it out, I can potentially use the AI tool then to finish it off. make the shading of it look more natural. And scale to match that in the background. Yeah, it really does want to do its own thing, doesn't it? Here's another option. We can go with this, and then what we can do is potentially use the overlay tool to paint green on it. So it looks like it's more in the distance. It's not an exact clone of this grass in the foreground. And this is something I used to do before the generative fill tools came in. So let's flatten that image. We're going to clone out the heal tool, not the, that's why it wouldn't let me select it. That didn't work great. So let's go for the clone stamp and now just take this section out. So we've got it more uniform. And what we can do now is zoom in. I really should zoom in more often when I'm editing these photos. And we're going to clone this section down as well. Go for some more. I've got a soft brush, so that's why the edge is really a little blurry there. So if I go with a larger brush and clean this up, just tidy all of this up. That's not going to cut it. So what I'm going to do here to get this line better is I'm going to draw it in from here and take it down to the base. And just bring this up. But I'm selecting this middle panel here. So now when I use a clone stamp, I can make the brush bigger, but only target the area in the selection. So when I bring it down, it keeps that straight edge much better. So there we go. We've got the edge of our shed. There's just a little bit here in the hedge I'm going to get rid of. Spot heal tool should take care of that. Right. Now let's have a look at this lawn in the background and make it look greener. So it's like that green spray you can put on your lawns. We're going to do a similar job in Photoshop. So once again, I'm going to select everything in this area so we can target this. And I'm going to go to the brush tool. Try something like overlay. See if this does it. The brush size is huge, so I just made the square brackets to make that smaller. And then with the overlay selected, and I've just selected the tone of that green in the grass, we can see we've already made it greener. That tone is a bit out, so we can select the tone from over here. Much bigger brush size. Deselect that, and we fixed our lawn without affecting the texture, and that's looking rather nice. Okay, now our final part, we're going to clean up this top section of the photo, and we'll take the pane of glass so we don't see through it. So first of all, I'm going to go to the heal tool and just get rid of these. I think we can see the reflection of the barrel here with some timber sticking out of it. So I'm going to tidy up that to make that less obvious, the stuff coming through that glass pane. But we're going to keep the door and the window the other side, even though it'll be much darker. Okay, that's a start. We just tidied up a little bit. But now let's take this section here. In fact, we'll just select everything within the window. And we've still got a bit of work to do here. So what I'm going to do is go to the burn tool, and we're going to select the highlights, and we're going to darken them. Take the exposure up. Take the saturation down. And midtones, we're going to make them darker as well. Now the shadows, we're going to make them black. Too much? In this case, playing around with it until we get to a point that could work for us. And I'm happier with that. We're still getting a little bit of the glare coming through. The light from his roof on the other side. But it's so much neater now. And let's just heal out the small brush size. Some of this detail in the background. So it's less obvious what's there. What I'm also going to do is see if I can simplify some of these areas here. Yeah, much happier with that. So that's the window in the door sorted. Let's have a look at the next part. In fact, what I'm going to do is take this hedge and clone it up higher. And finally, let's have a look at the sky. No, I think I'm going to keep this one grey. Reason being, the moment I've changed the sky, and because of the lighting, it's just looking unnatural. This is looking far more colourful and vibrant than the top is, but this is where we can use the dodge and burn tool and the saturation tools to tweak the top part of this photo. So I'm going to take the exposure right down to a manageable amount. Get a bit of moodier sky, a bit more contrast in it. With the sponge tool now, we can increase the saturation. We'll try it by 10%. Get a bit more colour in that sky. Can't do an awful lot with that light damage. And there we go. 20 odd minutes in, and we've been able to take a photo that was barely usable to start with. Here, lots going on, taking on the yard, and with just a bit of tidying up, we've been able to make it look more presentable. Still not perfect, and in fact, I could probably just take it out for a little bit, so let's just do that as a final job. We'll use the crop tool, and we'll just bring it left and right a tiny bit to frame it better. I think that first one is the best one. And there we go. This one's going to be a bit of fun. We've got a lot going on here. The angle of the building's a little bit out. When I started this series for fixing photos, one, I didn't realize how many outdoor buildings and sheds I'd use, and I'm looking to mix it up again in future videos so we can have more options to work with. But this is exactly the type of challenge I wanted to undertake. A beautiful building that's been hand-built, put into situ, but the only time the team had to take the photo was when they erected it, because they don't have the budget to go back and take a photo 6-12 months in, because they're already moved on to the next project. And this is a good real-world challenge that we have. Okay, we could say that they could have moved the tool bench and the vehicle door to make my job a little bit easier. Yeah, let's not worry too much about that. That just creates more of a challenge. I'm probably going to use the heel tool to see how that works to get rid of this door. I'll make it big enough size, and I'm just going to paint it over top of that door, just to see if we can get rid of it completely, or at least close enough. It's not bad. We can tidy up that fence, I hope. And yeah, let's get rid of some of the other glaring aspects in this photo to give ourselves a better starting canvas. Likewise with this workbench. How much manual fixing am I going to have to do later? Again, not perfect, but it's made it a little bit easier to work with. I think I can take some of the other aspects and bring them in. So let's start doing this with the clone stamp tool. So I'm going to take this timber here, align it. Get those lines nice and straight in there. And repeating patterns are always the best to work with. I'm using the clone tool, just bringing it on a little bit, then onto the next part. But we can see here that the line's not going at the right angle. So this is the first thing we have to do, is just to get that angle right. This isn't going to be perfect. But if we can get it close enough that we can't really tell, especially when we're zoomed out, that's good enough for me here. It's still taking a photo that's pretty much unusable in this aspect to showcase what can be done, to taking something that is pretty usable. So I'm using the lines as a starting point and just working across. This is one of the most enjoyable jobs I can do these days. I find it therapeutic, just going in and fixing photos. Probably says a lot about me and the exciting life I lead. I'm going to try and get this line working and fix again at the bottom here. I don't quite know how I'm going to do that yet. I think that's been added in by the heel tool. I think the line is more like that, actually. So let's fix this first. That door's not perfect, but I think we're going to leave it there for now and focus on some other aspects of this building. So next up, we're going to fix this lawn here at the front. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. And we'll flatten image. And we'll go again with the Same tool. This time we're just going to put grass. So I want it all to be grassed over. So I could have just re-rolled a few times with the generator fill tool. But let's see if we can get this nice and balanced. It can be more field than immaculate lawn at this stage. It's something we just don't want it detracting away from the building itself. And I don't really want anything in front of it. Keep thinking I want to put some sort of concrete pad or patio in front of it. I think we'll go with that. And I think what we'll do is what I do on every other photo that I edit here. So there's a telltale giveaway. We're going to put a hedge on the left. Or we could try wooden fence and see what it does for that. So I'm going to bring in more of the hedgerow in the background. Goodness knows what this fence is going to be like, but we'll give it a go. And it's done a hedge. Okay, I think that one looks pretty good. That doesn't look realistic, and that looks awful. So I think we're going to go with yet another hedge. It looks natural there. It fits nicely with the photo, at least in my opinion. I suppose my opinion counts here. And we're going to take this grass up to the edge now before we start tidying it up. Right, so we're going to start working on this in the foreground. Just go to the heal tool first and take out some of the aspects. Let's flatten that layer down. So we're going to make it look a little bit more presentable. Now we can look at this brush tool and we're going to bring it up the way to the edge of the building, which is just the clone stamp tool once more. Okay, that's looking a bit better. We're going to have a really straight line here, which we're going to get rid of afterwards and just make that look a little more realistic. And if we go to the sponge tool, we're going to saturate this by 10%. A little bit more life. In fact, I'm not going to do that. We're going to use the brush tool. And we're going to select some of this green in here and just paint over it. Give it a bit more impact. And then we're going to go to the hue option here, take it over to the greener and just take the saturation down a tiny bit. It's become too heavily saturated. And the lightness down a bit as well. Okay. So that's looking neater, but it's looking a bit too immaculate there to the bottom of that building. We're going to need a bit of a shadow there or something just to lift it above it. So one way we could do that is to use the burn tool. And let's go to the shadows. Let's take this up to something like 30%. And we can see now that's added a little bit of depth there in front of it. This is not a perfect solution. This is just me trying to find the balance between speed and making the building better presented. It's a beautiful building and we want to show it off a little bit more than obviously taking a very quick photo before leaving. And now what I'm doing is just fiddling it around a little bit so it's not going to be a straight line. This is really a bit of a hack, to be honest. But when we zoom out, we don't see that. We see shadows on the hedgerow and it looking better. If we find it's a bit too saturated now when we use the burn tool, what we can do is the sponge tool and then the desaturate option. And it takes it back a little bit. I don't think I'm going to spend much more time, if I'm being honest, on this one. Fix a bit of this lawn up a little bit so it looks a bit neater. And what I'm going to do next is take these windows and just see if I can use the heal tool. Quite a small brush size. I'm going to paint it round to take out that square if I can. If it's close enough, I'll go with it. You still see the outline there a little bit, which is a shame. Another option, we could use the clone tool. Don't take it over too far. There we go. Clone tool does a slightly neater job. Okay, we've got the van in the background. So it's up to us how much we want to take that out. At this level, it's not really obvious. What we can do though is use this marquee tool and select all of the windows. And if I hold Shift, we can select another level here. And another shape here again. For the sake of a couple of minutes, just to select all of these windows, I think it'll be worth it. Command L to go to levels. And I'm going to make all the windows darker. Bring the whites back so that they're not anywhere near as bright. But getting the balance right. We don't want it too dark so it looks unrealistic. But we're doing the same for the door as well, so it looks like it's tinted glass. What we can do now is, before actually deselecting that, I go to Command U, and then we're going to take the saturation right down so that those red bits there aren't coming through as obvious. And I think she's someone climbing there. So let's go to the heal tool and take out these lines here and blur it out slightly. There's also the blur option as well. So we can go to the blur. I think that brush size is huge, so I just need to bring that down. Strength 100% and just blur within this window a bit. Okay, so that glass still looks relatively realistic, but now it's not picking up anywhere near as many of the imperfections around it. Let's just take the sponge tool now and saturate this sky. Give it a bit more color here at the top. And what we're going to do is go to the dodge tool. And we're going to midtones, and we're going to lighten the midtones a little bit on this tree so it doesn't look quite so dark. Balance it out. We're going to burn the shadows in the foreground, about 10%. Go with 12, just in the foreground here. And then go to levels, and we're just going to tweak the entire photo. Give it a bit more punch. Filter to sharpen the edges. And I did say we were going to rotate it slightly so it doesn't look like it's sloping back so much on an angle. We're just going to do this a slight amount though. So if I click and grab the edge, just bring it over 1. Press enter. What it's going to use now is the generative tools here to tidy up where it's readjusted it. I'm going to flatten down that image. And there we go. Oh, there's a bit in there that I need to get rid of. So let's just see if we can heal this before wrapping up. Should really be zooming right in and doing that properly, but that looks better. So there we go. If we look at the original, really busy, so much going on around it. We wanted to just simplify it, streamline it, get rid of all of the reflections in the glass, get rid of the things in the foreground. And if we have a look at the final version, I think this looks natural enough. The hedge isn't pristine. Still the same trees in the background. It's got a bit more color as well, more punch to it. Yeah. Of all the ones I've done, I think this is one I'm the happiest with. This next photo is going to be a bit of a challenge, mainly because if we zoom in, we can see it's a really low resolution image. So we're going to have to be quite selective over where we use this photo. What I'm going to do is actually set more of a frame around it to build in more pixels, so it's not going to look pixelated if used in a slightly larger format. But we won't be using this for any sort of headers or hero sections in our websites. So let's, first up, use the crop tool. And let's extend the frame either side. And we're going to extend quite a bit. And we'll let it do its thing. We're not going to put any keywords in. And we'll let it generate. Just realized I've put more on the left than on the right, but I think that's fine. So it's put quite a bit in here. It's looking quite natural, and the flow really seems to work quite well. But I'm going to take stuff out of the background. The only thing is this isn't now the same location as it was before, because it's added stuff in. However, I'm not worried too much about that, because the product we need to be truthful about is the building itself. So I think this is a community cabin as opposed to the location. So if it's a little bit off in the location, maybe some locals will know, but it doesn't really, we're not fibbing about the product itself. So let's just heal up some of these areas. I just need to flatten it first. If I go into layer, flatten image, bring it all onto one level. And we see straight up the heal tool's not doing a great job. Too big an area to start with. So let's go for the clone stamp, S key, and I'm using the square bracket to enlarge the brush. And I'm going to take this section here and bring it over more, whilst this section here and bring it back. If that makes sense. So we're cloning the area you can see with the crosshairs. That's the bit that we're cloning as we're going through it. Okay, so that's looking better there already. We don't need a load of detail messing up our photo. If I go to the heal tool, see if we can take that out completely. It's going to be a bit blurry maybe. And if we just go for the marquee tool, I'm going to select that area and just see what it does. Generative fill doesn't always fix these type of issues. Just realized I've got the window going off the screen, so I'll just bring all of that in. And we've got our additional options then for that photo. I think that one could work quite nicely. We've just got almost like a parking area in the background. We're really going away from the original photo now, though. That's the only thing. But let's try it. Not happy with that at all. The heal tool does not seem to be behaving very well today. I could have used the traditional heal tool actually, which works like the clone tool, and it allows you to select different areas from which to copy across. In fact, let's go for that option. So if I hold in the heal tool, and we've got the healing brush tool, which is the original one, and let's select this area over here and clone this section, or heal this section. There we go. It's in the background more. We can even blur it a little bit as well to make that look more natural. Okay. Let's take a bit of this grass out, tidy it up, clean it up a little bit. Right. Okay. That's most of the editing I want to do on this one. It was already quite close to what it should have been anyway. So let's bring the levels up a bit. Hue and saturation. And bring the saturation up a tiny bit, but I don't want to bring it up too much either. And I think this is going to be a really quick tutorial. There's no point in creating ourselves work if we don't need it. I think this is nicely set now, and certainly a little less fussy because this is in a finished location and the photo's been taken afterwards. Okay, nothing's gone inside the building yet, but we can see the lights are working. There's no building work around it. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. And we're not going to do too much more with this photo. But if we go back to the original one, you can see it's cropped in a little bit. I'm not sure, is that a lake actually? So we could have put a lake in the background, but it's fine with a car park area. Again, hopefully there are people visiting who won't take it literally and end up in the lake, but yeah, I think we'll leave it there. So Shift, Option, Command S on a Mac, which will bring us the shortcut for the Save for Web option. The last one I did, the one I said I was really happy with, I forgot to save it, so I'm going to have to redo that one, which I'm not happy with myself about because it's part of my process. I always save before I shut down the photos, and it even come up with a prompt saying I should have saved it. Anyway, if you take nothing else away from these little workshops, saving it is always good. And I've just realized I've saved it without the changes, so let's not do a double whammy of doing that. What a wally. Right, let's try this. Okay, so now we've saved it with the edited photo, and I promise I'll be back very soon with the next tutorial. Catch you next time.